are in listen-only mode.
Hi, and welcome to the Hospitality House joining with the Young Adult Season Service webinar. We apologize for the technical difficulties, but we really want to welcome everybody that is joining us and can now hear us. My name is Rob Four. I'm the Young Adult Catalyst for the Presbyterian Mission Agency, and I will be moderating today's webinar. I'm very excited to have the opportunity to sponsor this webinar along with Wayne Meisel from Faith 3 and Richard Williams from the U.S.A.'s Young Adult Volunteer Program. We are very excited today to spend some time with you all talking about this growing movement in the U.S.A. We'd also like to extend a warm welcome to our ecumenical partners that might be joining us. So welcome to everybody. Again, as of January 1st this year, the Presbyterian Mission Agency has officially started to live into its 2013 and 2016 mission work plan. And young adults are a major focus of that plan. You can see the directional goal in your screen there. And it's important that we're defining young adults as 18 to 30 years old, even though there are different ways of defining young adults. We at the Mission Agency are calling them 18 to 30 years old. So as you can see, one of our objectives to accomplishing this audacious goal is inspiring congregations to join with young adults in a season of service. To accomplish this goal, the Presbyterian Mission Agency is looking to grow our existing models of service, such as the one-year-long Young Adult Volunteer Program, as well as identify other models of service with which to connect. And one of those other models we'll be talking about today, which is the Hospitality House movement, and hopefully we'll be building a network of hospitality houses. And I'd like to invite my friend and colleague Richard Williams, a co-sponsor of this webinar. Richard is the coordinator of the Young Adult Volunteer Program, to say a bit more.
Thanks, Rob. The Young Adult Volunteer Program of the Presbyterian Church is excited to be a part of these goals for the young adults. We've been challenged to triple the size and scope of our program in the next 4 years, and we believe that this conversation we're having today is a key part. The Young Adult Volunteer Program has young adults from 19 to 30 serving for a year around the country and around the world. And this conversation with young adults in service about living and growing together in their spiritual development is a great way for our entire church to support and be transformed by these ministries. Rob, I mentioned a goal that the YAV program has to triple in size, and that's a tall order for us. But even at that size, we would be at a couple of hundred participants. This network of hospitality houses has the opportunity of seeing God's transforming work in thousands of lives.
Thanks a lot, Richard. That's well said. We're really hoping that this initiative and this effort really takes off and really ends up engaging young adults and really impacting the thousands of lives, as Richard mentioned. To get us started today, Richard, would you mind starting us off with a word of prayer?
Sure. Good and gracious God, across time and space, across web and wires, gather us into your heart, so that we can know where you are and know how we can follow you. Have us now listen and hear, speak and be heard in ways that would be pleasing to you. And all this we ask in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, today we have 4 panelists, and we're really excited to have each one of them joining us today. We have the Reverend Wayne Meisel from the Faith 3 and Cousins Foundation, the Reverend Karen Hernandez-Granzen, pastor of Westminster Presbyterian Church and chaplain and coordinator of the Bethany Presbyterian House of Hospitality in Trenton, New Jersey. We've got Kyle Kuyers, resident of the Common House at Waynesburg University in Waynesburg, Pennsylvania. And we have the Reverend Dr. Jack Barton, Vice President for Admissions at Austin Presbyterian Theological Seminary. Wayne will be providing us with an overview and the vision of the Hospitality House movement, and also providing us a little bit of history with it. Karen will talk about her experiences with the Bethany Presbyterian House of Hospitality in urban Trenton, New Jersey. Kyle will talk about his experience with Common House, a college campus-based hospitality house model at Waynesburg University in Waynesburg, PA. And Jack will talk about his experiences with the AYAVA House, a seminary-based hospitality house model located at Austin Presbyterian Theological Seminary, and its partnership with the Young Adult Volunteer Program. It's important to remember that these are 3 very different and diverse contexts. What may work in one may not work at all in another. The point here, we're hoping that you all will we'll take away from this is that there is no magic formula for starting a hospitality house, but we're hoping that the individual experiences of our panelists will be helpful for you, especially if you are interested in starting one of these intentional communities in your area. So today we've got 4 objectives that we've kind of loosely identified as what we want to accomplish here, and each of our panelists are going to be speaking to these 4 objectives roughly. The objectives include, we're going to learn more about the experiences of our panelists in their 3 diverse contexts, including their connections to congregation and the broader community. Second objective is to learn more about the experiences of our panelists in starting up a hospitality house, including acquiring a space, recruiting young adults, setting up a community rule of life, resolving conflict, and fostering intentional conversations, etc. Third objective, we'll discuss a little bit about the economics of starting up a hospitality house, including startup funds, setting a plan for financial sustainability, etc. And the fourth will be how you can access available resources, which we've compiled and help you get a hospitality house started in your community, as well as we're hoping that we can talk a little bit about building a network of these hospitality houses within the broader church. Okay, so a couple of features about GoToWebinar. We'll be taking questions using the question box within the panel on the right side of your computer screen. If you don't see a panel on the right side of your screen, look for a red arrow on the narrow strip at the top of the screen on the right. If you click on that arrow, a panel will pop out from the side of the screen. You can use that arrow to open or close the panel as needed during the webinar, because it will cover up some of the presentation that you're seeing today if you have it open the whole time. When the panel is open, you'll see a small white text box for questions. To ask a question, click in the box, type your question, and press Enter. And we will be reviewing your questions throughout the webinar and hope to address some of them at the end of the webinar today, if we have enough time. Feel free to type in the questions for the panelist as you hear him or her speaking, or if anything pops into mind as we're going about this. We may not be able to answer every single question, but we'll get to as many as we can at the end of the webinar. And the most frequently asked questions we'll kind of compile, and we'll answer after the webinar is over and post those online or email them to you. Another quick housekeeping item, those of you who are dialing in using your telephone may have a long-distance telephone charge, but if you're participating online, there's no cost to that. And remember, if you can't hear us, please turn up your volume, turn up your speakers. Okay, so I think that is all the housekeeping I've got. I think we can go to our first panelist, the Reverend Wayne Meisel. And Wayne, welcome, and tell us about your involvement with the Hospitality House movement.
Well, hello everybody. Webinars and PowerPoints, those aren't really the environment I'm used to. There's paper everywhere on my desk, and I'm missing everybody. Having said that, it is a joy. It's a joy to be with all of you at this important time. I'm grateful for the organizations and the collaboration and the people that brought all this together. People from the Presbyterian Church, but also their folks I know from the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, from the Bonner community, from the UCC. For those of you who don't know me, I define myself do good without being good, and I've done that for quite a long time. My involvement is with the service world has been actually much more than my involvement with the church world until recently. For over 2 decades, I worked and ran the Bonner Foundation in Princeton, New Jersey, which runs the Bonner Scholar Program. Was part of the team appointed by President Bush to build the AmeriCorps program, and was also an original board member and an early friend of Wendy Kopp when she started Teach for America. So I say all that to just kind of give you a sense of my, really much more my secular involvement with the service world. And recently, several years ago, I worked with the Lilly Endowment, which had been providing a tremendous amount of money to colleges and universities for their vocational discernment pieces. This program, Volunteers Exploring Vocation, which is a coalition of about 15 different faith-based young adult volunteer programs that are doing this kind of work. And it was through that energy and through that work that I got to know the great example of the young adult volunteer program and others as well. Much of this being the inspiration for that. when I think about my commitment to my faith and Christian practice and a sense of who we are, what we're called to be, the word that comes to my mind is hospitality. And so what I think about in all this is how do we claim or reclaim our tradition of hospitality as a defining practice of who we are and how we get to live out our life of faith. Now, when I tell people that being a Christian or being a Presbyterian, the defining aspect of it is hospitality, I often get some kind of odd looks. And I think we see that, the basis for that, if we look at the book by Gabe Lyons, Unchristian, we think about the stereotypes that non-Christians have about Christians as being not hospitable, unwelcoming, judgmental, exclusive, and all those kinds of things. But I believe I grew up in a situation where people came to our homes all the time, people of all faiths and all ages, and we broke bread together, and we built community through that. So it is out of that basis, out of that feeling that here I stand and can do no other. So if we look at slide number 7, current situation. We know that this generation is a generation of young adults, or young people are defined by their commitment to service and to justice. Tens of thousands of young adults every year commit to doing a year of service at least through programs like AmeriCorps and VISTA and City Year. These individuals often arrive in our communities where they know few people and are placed in positions and are really on the front lines of poverty issues and with all the stress and the challenges and the isolation that comes with that. Their stipends tend to be small and sometimes very small, leaving these folks with little money for food, for housing, for social life, for any kind of personal development. Yet many of these individuals do not have a good relationship with the church or see Christian as a positive image. They don't see that the church cares about them or about the issues and the causes that they champion. On the other hand, how about churches? Many churches and religious leaders are frustrated and even disheartened by the lack of the interest in the church on the part of young adults and their identity as being spiritual but not religious. The community activities of church, especially Sunday morning worship and evening Bible study, is often not appealing or not feeling relevant to the young adults in these programs, and it fails to draw them into congregational life. But I believe that congregations, even small ones with diminished budgets, have resources that these young adults desperately need, including, but not limited to, housing options, food, fellowship, mentors that can serve as conversation and discernment partners. I believe, and Karen Hernandez has taught me this, that churches, by definitions, are portals into local communities. They are the entry point and access that churches have that can be enormous help to this population. Now, over the years, as I mentioned, mainline denominations and peace churches and Catholic orders have developed these year-long service programs. These programs play a significant role in the life of the community and the church and the participants. The challenge is that the number of positions available, even if we grow these numbers by 2 and 3 times, still does not begin to fulfill the potential for outreach and the possibility for engagement. Just to give you some statistics, there are nearly 100,000 people every year that join AmeriCorps. They are not all young adults, but most are. And on top of that, there are 585,000 people that apply for those positions. So what we see is this tremendous activity and engagement and work that is going on. The other thing I would want to point out in terms of the church is that within the more evangelical wing, Tony Campolo, Shane Claiborne, there is this kind of birth of this new monastic movement, which I think in a lot of ways we are looking at and we're borrowing from, but in many ways the mainline church has not embraced or understood or gone far enough with. In a lot of ways, the effort that we're talking about here does just that. If we go to slide number 8, response, action, and the radical Christian call to hospitality. What I want to do primarily today is kind of shut up and get out of the way for the rest of my panelists to be able to share their practical experiences. But what I would say is that over the last 3 or 4 years, I have traveled the country, met with young adults, met with congregations, met with service programs, and really sought to figure out what are ways, where are the intersections. A number of 3 or 4 years ago, I was able to preach at Westminster Presbyterian Church in downtown Minneapolis, a congregation where my dad had served for over 20 years as the senior pastor on McAllister Sunday. And I got in that moment a chance to put forward perhaps the original version or vision that I had for the notion of houses of hospitality. How can we take spaces that perhaps are unoccupied or that we as churches have access to, and to create a space that is inspired by everyone from St. Benedict to Shane Claiborne to Tony Campolo to the practice of YAV, and create space to place new steps of change. So besides housing, what I wanted to do is just kind of lift up a few things. And if you go to the Faith 3 website, Faith 3 meaning faith active in the head, heart, hand, we have conversations around housing, but we also talk about a program that we recently launched called The Table, where we encourage churches to host a weekly meal. And if it can't be weekly, then maybe it can be monthly, where simple conversation can go on. We've developed a resource entitled Vespers, which is a yearly curriculum that goes through week by week for a congregation or for a community of people to have conversations around simple living, community life, spiritual formation, and personal development. We're working with Mackie Alston, who's a preacher's kid as well, who is the founder of Auburn Media, winner of a Jurist Award at the Sundance Film Festival. His most recent film, Love Free or Die, is about Bishop Gene Robinson. And so we're looking to create, again, programming and opportunities for folks to have available to them. If we skip to number F, AmeriCorps chaplaincy, what I want to lift up is that we talk about food and fellowship and housing, but perhaps most of all, we need to think about how we can be present in the lives of folks that are struggling, because it's a difficult time of life. My dad was a member of he was a Navy chaplain during the Second World War for the Armed Services. And this notion of an AmeriCorps chaplaincy is the idea, if the national service, why can't national service have chaplains, or why shouldn't they if the armed services do? Both are situations where young adults are making commitments to serve their country in sometimes very challenging situations. So as we look to go, I see I have one more minute. That may have been posted a while ago. Moving forward, I wanted to suggest to you that we are building a movement, not creating an empire, that we are, there are many people that might reference me or see me actively involved in this, but to be clear, I did not invent this, I don't own it, I didn't start it, I don't run it, but I do believe in the idea, I believe in you, I'm moved by the Holy Spirit, I'm inspired by the people on the panel, the organizations that made this possible. I feel blessed to be part of something wonderful and have high expectations and have even higher standards as we seek to proceed. I want to suggest to you that we're going to hear different things, we're going to hear contradictory things, and that's just what happens when movements are being born. Any young adult that comes to a city to serve will be able to walk into any church and say, here I am. I heard you will make me your own. You will meet me at the airport when I arrive. You will offer me a cup of coffee. You'll give me a ride to the church where I can stay until I find a place to live. You will help me find a place maybe to live and introduce me to other like-minded people. If you have a house or apartment or a room for me to live, that would be great. We will break bread together on Thursday nights and watch movies and eat popcorn and have conversations. When I'm sick, you will take me to the doctor. When I'm sad, you will listen to me and make me chocolate chip cookies. When I feel like I'm terrible at my job, you will connect me with a mentor. When I'm trying to figure out what to do with my life, you will open the doors of wisdom by the members of the church and help me discern my life. When I leave the city, I will feel like I'm leaving home. And if I decide to stay in the community, I will have already found one. So, thank you. And there's a list of slides about 15 things to consider as you launch a hospitality. I have expounded on those 15 points. You'll get that document later, but many of them will be better answered by my family. And what a joyful time. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Wayne. That was really, really, really helpful. And thank you for kind of setting the tone here, and especially talking about the decentralized nature of this movement, and that there's not one way to do this, and there are many different ways. And it's the ethos of the movement that I think is the most exciting. Okay, so our next panelist, I'd like to welcome the Reverend Karen Hernandez-Granzen to talk to us a little bit about her experience with the Bethany House Hospitality in Trenton, New Jersey. Welcome, Karen.
Gracias. Buenas tardes, everyone. Let me begin by saying that my goal is to inspire those of you that are considering creating these houses of hospitality, and also potential residents. I want to inspire you, but in 10 minutes, that's not a lot of time to do it. I'm hoping to share the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's the blessings and the challenges of creating houses of hospitality, and so you will learn about all the resources that we're willing to share. So in these less than 10 minutes now, let me share what I can. Bethany Presbyterian House of Hospitality is the former Bethany Church Parish House. It's just 3 blocks from the Trenton, New Jersey train station and a block away from a bus line. We designed the Bethany House to be an intentional young adult community that draws on the tradition of service and justice, and that we understand those to be the core of our faith commitments. Every Wednesday, our residents gather to share a meal together, to cook it together, to check in to see how they are living up to their rules for community life. What am I talking about? The sharing of their chores, checking in to see how things are going. On Thursdays, every Thursday, one or more of our congregations sponsor a time of food and fellowship at the house. And during this time, we do often use the curriculum that Wayne mentioned, Vespers, a year-long journey of faith and service. This coming Lenten season, we will be reading the book, The New Jim Crow. And ever since we started Bethany House, that's about 1.5 years now, we're in our 2nd year, we invite facilitators to come and share, church leaders, community leaders. We give them the link so they can either use this Vesper material that's available free of charge, or they can share their fields of passion and expertise. Several times a year, the residents are invited to local community events, and they benefit from free tickets to the local theater productions, such as they got to see A Christmas Carol back in December. Also, we have a Presbyterian resident doctor on call for our residents. Now, Wayne mentioned that it's not all about him, but kudos to him, because Wayne began by working with New Brunswick Presbyterian's Committee on Higher Education to share his vision. The committee caught that vision, but unfortunately at that time, this is going back maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we didn't have a house, and we also had a very limited pool of potential residents. Then, with appropriate tactfulness and compassion, Wayne asked us, after the untimely death of the pastor of Bethany Presbyterian Church, wonderful woman of God, Reverend Alice Bejeni, after her death, he asked the Urban Mission Cabinet to consider endorsing the renovation of the church's parish house. We were able, I'm the co-moderator of the Urban Mission Cabinet, we were able to unanimously endorse this project because at that time, and we believe it to have been a kairos moment, Cousins Foundation was willing to support the project. Nassau Presbyterian Church was willing to match their donation. Bonner Foundation had gotten a bigger grant so they can have over 50 slots for potential AmeriCorps residents, AmeriCorps and VISTA members. Princeton Theological Seminary and Education Works was willing to work with us. So it really became much more of a possibility because all of these things were in place. So when the Urban Mission Cabinet requested approval from the New Brunswick Presbytery to use its urban funds to renovate the parish house, they said yes. And they approved us dedicating the Bethany Parish to become the Bethany House of Hospitality and to hire a part-time chaplain coordinator. So on December the 12th, 2011, we dedicated the Bethany House. How did we go about recruitment and selection? Well, I believe that we should not reinvent the wheel. And so we visited the House of Hospitality in New York City, led by the Lutherans, and we made several phone calls to Broad Street Ministries, learning about their recruitment and selection process, tweaking their application. We were able to adopt our own process. And so the residents are interviewed and selected by Urban Mission Cabinet representatives and by me serving as the chaplain coordinator. We benefit by focusing on organizations, as I mentioned, Bonner, the Presbyterian Theological, the Princeton Theological Seminary and Education Works of New Jersey. We benefit by focusing on recruiting among their potential staff because they've already been vetted and they already have background checks. So let me move on now to specific money. So we got a $10,000 grant from Cousins, NASFO matched the $10,000, and the Urban Mission Cabinet donated over $20,000 for the renovation, as well as for the part-time person, as well as for any additional renovations that, or rather maintenance that is needed. The Wright Memorial Presbyterian Church donated kitchen appliances and aisles. A local organization with young adults that are trained to become carpenters and plumbers, etc., donated their services. Wayne and his wife, KP, donated household items, and Reverend Dr. Catherine Sackenfeld donated furniture for our office. We could not have done the renovation without the help of volunteers. And so we had over 6 urban and suburban churches helping us to volunteer, and we also have we have 9 churches that are helping to implement the table part of our program that Wayne mentioned. So 9 churches are hosting meals on Thursdays, and over 15 local pastors, church and community leaders are helping us to facilitate our Vespers on a weekly basis. So, you know, what are the rules for community life? They're living simply. The residents are participating in a communal way. They're exploring new and ancient spiritual practices, and they're engaging in their neighborhood. The residents are participating in local events. I mentioned that. But for instance, there's an annual St. Patrick's Day parade, and so our residents hosted the luncheon. The residents have also included in what we call the community covenant that they wrote themselves and then signed, and then not only signed among themselves, but they actually signed it at a dedication service at one of the New Brunswick Presbyterian meetings. And part of their commitment is not only to serve in their local settings, crisis ministries, etc., but they are also volunteering as a unit. And so 5 of them have volunteered in local churches. The biggest project, and I have less than 2 minutes now to talk about, that they volunteered in, and you'll see the pictures right there on the screen, is the creation of the Bethany House Community Garden. And the residents helped us build a pergola on the top right-hand side of the screen with the help of suburban and urban volunteers. And what the residents do is that they harvest the produce, they give it to the crisis ministries, who then distributes the food that is harvested, the fruit and vegetables, to the food pantry residents. So in the, what I want to then say in less than a minute now is to emphasize that they have we have some wonderful resources to share. We invite you to visit their blog, www.bethanyhoh@wordpress.com. We invite you to let us know if you want some of our written resources. We've got lots. You know, they say that Presbyterians pump paper, and so we are willing to share all of our written resources. I'm done.
Thank you very much, Karen. That was really, really helpful. Okay, now I'd like to welcome our second panelist, Kyle Kuyers, who is at Common House at Waynesburg University. Kyle, welcome. I'd love to hear about your experience with Common House.
Thank you. Good afternoon from Waynesburg, Pennsylvania. Like was said, I am a recent graduate of Waynesburg University with a degree in religion and philosophy and a minor in service leadership. And at the point that I was graduating, our house project's really kind of neat because we have a blend of some outside folks like Wayne and some folks at the university that were looking to start an intentional Christian living community, as well as a group of my peers that were really excited about starting something like this and getting involved in something like this local. Specifically, that pilot group that first moved in a year and a half ago was just really, really passionate about the local community. So the Common House consists of a small group of young adults in rural southwestern Pennsylvania dedicated to the transformation of lives through fostering Christian community and the pursuit of faithful living. And you can see there on the slide, we have our vision statement as well as our core values, and those kind of really shape everything that we do at the Common House, from the development of more specific house rules to the development of house roles and chores, as well as just where folks are plugging into the community in terms of finding a job and serving. And really everything that we do, the structure of the Common House has two fundamental concepts, and that's fostering Christian community and the pursuit of faithful living. And when we say faithful living, we want to learn and sort of develop an understanding as housemates of what it means to live faithfully as family, what it means to be faithful in the work environment, but also to come home and interact meaningfully with the people that you're living with. If you want to go ahead and jump to the next slide. As a part of that faithful living piece, this is sort of a quick glance at what a normal week looks like for us. We have a weekly study with a spiritual director that involves, sort of taking the pulse and temperature of the community, checking in to see how all the members are doing. But that also usually involves some form of study. We've sort of worked through some different books in that process: Living into Community, The Rule of St. Benedict, Life Together by Bonhoeffer, as well as 7 Principles of Making Marriage Work. And we all sort of joke about that. It's kind of funny that, like, as young adults living together, we're reading a marriage book. But those types of resources do offer a lot of the really practical, how do you make this sort of living together thing and sharing values thing happen. So don't rule them out. We thought it was ridiculous, but there were parts of that that were very worthwhile. Together as a house, we also do a weekly Bible study, and we've explored, since we've got here, different methods of study, whether that's Lectio Divina or Indective study, which is, I think, our popular choice and the one we do most often, as well as some exegetical stuff. And then we, on Sunday evenings, have our meals together. You heard Karen talk about this with her place. We cook together as a community. We use that time to check in with one another, how we're doing, to debrief the week, to talk about the ways that God's kind of moving and shaking in our lives, but then also to kind of just be real with one another and spend time with one another. We do have mentors that we meet with every so often. You see there, we like to meet with them once a month. Some of us meet with them more regularly around the community. Again, just to kind of check in with somebody who's not directly in the community house bubble. So you have somebody that you're talking to, somebody responsible, somebody that can provide some accountability, but again, is a different face. And again, we also are really big on taking time away from the house, taking time for Sabbath, taking retreat times together, not only where we're learning and growing, but also just relaxing with one another and, again, sharing life. And another huge component, in addition to the discipleship part, is the service component of our house. Now, when we first moved in, we sort of said, we have these hard and fast guidelines over what service is and how much you're required to do, as several of us were coming from sort of that Bonner background. But as we got into this, we realized that if we had these stipulations, like so many hours per week if you were in a nonprofit, and so many if you were in a regular work job, we'll say, those requirements were putting a lot of stress and tension on the community to the point where we felt like we weren't seeing one another. So we sort of rephrased some of our language in the way we talked about service to say, hey, we want you actively involved in the community, whether that means at your church, at the food bank, with Habitat for Humanity, witnessing to folks in the community, being a good mentor to youth in the area, so on and so forth. We kind of made that more loose, but we do like to have 3 house projects a year that everyone in the house does together, and that's anything from working at Habitat for Humanity to putting on our annual Christmas party, doing a Christmas dinner, or just supporting each other at our various service sites. If you want to jump to the next slide. So like I said, when we started pulling this together, we had like a group of students, myself included, that were like, we are going to stay in Waynesburg and do intentional community and serve this area that we love so much. And we had several faculty members from the university, a local businessman by the name of Chuck, and Wayne, who were sort of saying, we want to start something like this and see what this would look like in the local area. So the mesh sort of happened. In terms of how the program works, a lot of it is in kind. All that spiritual director stuff, that's all in kind, done by different pastors that have come in over these few weeks. The Cousins Foundation gave us a grant of $10,000, much like Bethany House. But as community members, we each pay $200 a month into our community house fund. $150 of that goes to rent utilities, and then $50 of that goes towards like our grocery fund as well as any programmatic fund that we supplement with the grant. Chuck Bailey has agreed to rent us the place where we're residing, the actual physical common house, at a very reduced rent rate, which is phenomenal, and he actually provides all of our literature free of charge, which is tremendous. And again, the university staff as well as local churches have been tremendously supportive in things that we have done and have been working on. In terms of rules for community life, like I said, everything really goes back to those core values and our vision statement. And those rules can involve anything from, these are things that you're expected to participate in, like Bible study, like our Monday or Tuesday night meetings with our spiritual director, like meals together, as well as the nitty-gritty stuff like floor arrangements, where guys are allowed, where girls are allowed, when that's allowed to happen. And it's interesting because when we were first putting this whole order of living together, the big concern was over alcohol. We spent a lot of time talking about that as a specific issue. Rolling into year 2, not so much of a big issue. This time around, we heard visitation policy. When we have guests over, how long they can stay, what's the process for approving that, with other folks in the community. That became an issue that came to the forefront. So it's interesting to kind of see as the community grows and develops what become sort of the key issues that, as Bonhoeffer would say, develop into the death of community. But like I said, above all, we go back to those core values in that vision statement to say, hey, this is why we've agreed to what we agree upon, and as long as we're supporting those values, we feel like we're in a good place. In terms of different programs that we've done, we've gone to different dinners dealing with focus of ministry and evangelism techniques. We've had several retreats where we're just like casting visions on this house that we're living in. We've done, again, our weekly meetings with our spiritual directors. We've had retreats with other folks in other intentional Christian living communities in like the Pittsburgh area, which is about an hour away, talking about addressing needs through the way that we handle things like transition, and I'll get to that in just a second. So as we talk about challenges that we faced, like I said, that service one was a big one. We really had to revamp the way we were talking about our expectation for service, as it was sort of tearing away from our ability to just be community and family together. When we first got here, the community perception of the house was tough. People were like, is this an off-campus house? Is this a fraternity sorority? What is this? And even then, because again, southwestern PA, we have a fairly conservative church range around us, a lot of people even still are sort of like, oh my gosh, these are guys and girls living together. Can you believe this? This is awful. So just having a positive presence in the community and being really intentional about doing some good work that's very visible has kind of helped with that. Transitions is a big one, and I'll talk about that when I get to suggestions here in a minute. We had a house member leave very early on in this process. That was hard on community. We've had community members date, which kind of date within the house, which kind of caused some conflict and ended up in somebody moving out temporarily until the other member who they were dating had transitioned out of the program. So that transition piece was always really tough, as well as just, we transition spiritual directors, and after you get to know somebody, that can be really hard, so on and so forth. And again, just sort of identifying who our point person is in terms of the spiritual director and the other mentors that are around us. That go-to person has been a big thing. I really want to talk about Joyce, and I know I'm running short on time. The impact in the community, specifically with me, I've had a great experience with Vista. I feel like I've made a really big change in terms of food banking in the local area. Relationships within the house and a depth of understanding and of faithful family has just been incredibly fruitful. The opportunities to kind of sit back and discern vocational and avocational calling while not feeling like you're wasting your life working at McDonald's post-graduation has been absolutely tremendous. And then just learning about how to invest in community, how to do things like host keynote speakers and host mission trips and do parties while, again, still being faithful to community needs. Going on to these suggestions, you see entrances and exit procedures are huge. That can really be damaging to the community. That's something that we've really experienced. So having those hard and fast guidelines put into place beforehand can really, really help when, you know, the ugly sort of hits the fan. Members finding help in terms of finding a job, that would be tremendous because, again, we're looking for AmeriCorps positions, we're looking for youth director positions, part-time positions, having somebody with their finger on the pulse of the community to say, hey, this would be a great place for some of our young adults to plug in, and then making those connections ahead of time would be great. And again, to echo Karen, having one point person over the house who all the house members go to is super, super helpful in terms of resolving conflict, developing the program, doing strategic planning, and just representing the residents to other folks who are involved. So, yeah, thank you all very much.
Thanks a lot, Kyle. That was great. Thanks for sharing your experiences at the Common House. Just wanted to make a quick announcement that apparently we're getting some really good questions in from you all, so I really want to encourage you all to keep on sending in your questions as they arise. And we're tracking them all, and we're going to have a log of them, and we're going to try to get to as many as possible at the end of our webinar if we have time. But we will, again, try to answer as many as possible and make those answers and refer those questions to our panelists individually or collectively and try to get a body of those questions answered and posted online and sent out to you all. So next up, we have our fourth and final panelist, the Reverend Dr. Jack Barden, from representing the Ayava House at Austin Presbyterian Theological Seminary. Jack, welcome, and we'd love to hear about your experience.
Thanks, Rob. I know we've heard a lot about the composition of these houses of hospitality, and our house at Austin Seminary is not too different, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how and why we started it up, and then I want to sort of step out of the way and get to some of those questions that you all may have. About 3 or 4 years ago, as the admissions officer at Austin Seminary, we were seeing people coming to seminary and feeling a call to ministry coming out of programs of a year of service, whether it be AmeriCorps or Vista or Peace Corps or the Presbyterian Church, U.S.A. Young Adult Volunteer Program. They were choosing to answer a call to ministry and come to seminary. And we began thinking, how can the seminary reach out to those folks to encourage them in their discernment and to be a resource not only to those who were coming to our seminary or going to other seminaries, but to those who might discern their call in a different direction, who would never go to seminary, but who may still want to know that theological education is available to them and how they might access it. So with that in mind, Austin Seminary decided to dedicate some of its resources to promoting an intentional community for young adults in a year of volunteer service. We set aside 2 apartments, 2 3-bedroom apartments that were normally used for students and their families, and we set it aside for this program. And we began to recruit AmeriCorps workers who were moving to Austin, who would be looking for a place to live, who wanted to be in intentional community, who wanted to live on the campus of Austin Seminary, have an opportunity to be involved in spiritual practices, in theological reflection, in vocational discernment, in simple living. And so we started our first year with 6 AmeriCorps workers who were moving to the Austin area who chose to live in this kind of environment and be part of the Austin Seminary community as they worked in the larger community in service, primarily in school districts as tutors and literacy tutors in elementary schools. So that was our first year. As part of that first year, about the time we were launching that, I was in conversation with Wayne Meisel and others, and the Cousins Foundation gave us some startup funds to help buy some furniture and to get some of our programming up and running. The seminary devoted some of its financial resources to supporting this program. We were able to devote the resources of personnel in my office to make this a possibility. So my involvement with this program is roughly 5 to 10 hours a week. My office coordinator serves as the chaplain and on-site coordinator for this program, and about 50% of her time is devoted to this program. And we have a recruiter in our office who is not only recruiting students for seminary, but is also recruiting participants for a Yava House. And as you can see, a Yava House stands for Austin Young Adult Volunteer and AmeriCorps. Our first year we had 6 AmeriCorps residents. Our second year we partnered with the U.S.A. Young Adult Volunteer Program to be a YAV site. We went through the recruitment and interview process and selected 3 young adult volunteers who are now living in our house this year. And those folks have joined 3 new AmeriCorps workers and 3 returning AmeriCorps workers. So we have 9 people in the house this year. That's 3 bedroom apartments, and they spend time working together, studying together, eating together, playing together, and praying together. If you want to move to the next slide, you'll see a little bit more about what the house principles are. As others have said, we look at vocational discernment, we look at service to community, we intentionally reflect theologically on how folks are being engaged in their community and what that means for their faith. We engage in spiritual practices together, and we practice simple living. The way we do this, each one of our residents has a full-time 40-plus hour a week placement, but in addition to that, they are having weekly dinners, usually on Sunday evening, where one member of the house or 2 members of the house will cook dinner for everybody else, and they rotate that. That's a time to just check in with each other to make sure that any problems or any joys or any concerns about the house living and the communal life are being worked through. Then on Wednesday evening, they have a more intentional curriculum study. They have read Dietrich Bonhoeffer's Life Together. They have used some of the Vespers curriculum that was mentioned earlier. They have used other kinds of creative writing resources to journal and to look at various topics of interest to the residents. And so that's how they engage intentionally in those activities. We also have quarterly retreats that are either a day-long opportunity or a weekend-long opportunity to get away from their regular schedule and to be involved with each other and to do reflection. One thing that is unique about our opportunity, because it is on a seminary campus, they have the opportunity to interact with the seminary community. That means that from time to time, our seminary faculty will join them at dinner for Sunday evening or maybe for their study on Wednesday evening, and those faculty members will share some of their experiences, some of their call stories, some of their vocational journeys, and listen and reflect with the residents of the house as they're thinking about how their faith informs their vocation and vice versa. Then they also get to know students at our seminary who are working towards leadership in ministry and in their communities and developing those relationships. And we think that's an important part of the experience on our seminary campus. I do want to say that in Austin, Central Presbyterian Church has been a strong partner of this project. They have helped connect us up with folks in the community who may want to have young adult volunteers placed in their agency. Our young adult volunteers have mostly been worshiping with Central Presbyterian Church, and that congregation continues to be a strong supporter of this program in every way possible. Right now they're looking at the possibility of maybe having a young adult volunteer serving in ministry at Central Presbyterian Church perhaps in the next program year. So we're excited about all of that. So with that being said, I want to step aside from talking and get to some of your questions and leave time to answer some of those. So I'll turn it back over to you, Rob.
Thanks a lot, Jack. I really appreciate it. And in the interest of keeping as many as you want as possible, I want to skip real quickly to, before we do Q&R, to just make a quick announcement about the resources from this webinar. As I mentioned a few times, that we'll be sending these out to you in an email, and they'll be available online as well at the links you see right there on your screen. And we imagine the resources are going to include a recording of today's webinar and how you can access that, the PowerPoint presentation of today's webinar, a Hospitality House resource packet, which we've been compiling a lot of the good Faith 3 things that the Faith 3 folks have been putting together. That resource is going to include an invitation, or I'm sorry, a contact list of all of the panelists and sponsors. So you really are, if we don't get to your questions today on the webinar, you can please email us individually. And again, we're going to try to answer all the questions, whether it's via email or resource or whatever. But we're going to try to get them all answered. Okay, so with that in mind, and then another quick request is other resources. If you all have any things that would be good to add to this this effort, this initiative, we'd really like to see any resources that you think would be helpful. Or if you start doing this in your community, to please let us know what you are doing and what resources you're using. And we're going to have places online that are going to exist in cyberspace, both on the Presbyterian Mission Agency's website and the Faith 3 website, on how we can kind of aggregate all those resources. Because again, we're really trying to build this kind of movement that is that's loosely connected through a network, but we're all in this together. So, okay, I am now going to go over to Richard Williams, who has been looking at the questions and is going to refer the questions to the panelists. Panelists, feel free to answer any one of these questions as you feel called. So, Richard,
sure.
I'll give it to you.
Sure. You guys have been a very active bunch. We've had many good questions. Many of them are great, and I think will have benefit for everybody to hear and listen to them. So we'll move right into those. The questions are kind of in two different buckets as I think about it. There's one that are asking about the concept, and then a lot that are asking about the nitty-gritty details, and I'll try to alternate between those two ideas. Let's start off with our first question. How does one go about making contact with these young adults that are working and serving in one's community? And I'll kick that over to Wayne to start, and if you want to call another panelist, please do. Wayne?
Yeah, well, I think that everyone's experience will be a little different, but there is this kind of common theme of what does it mean for us to kind of go a little bit beyond our comfort zone. I mean, my initial response is, well, if we need to find an accountant, we know how to do it. These folks they're in our church, they're our kids, they're our kids' friends, they work in the coffee shops that we're at. So I think there is this kind of general overall, let's go find them and not be afraid of them and worry that we're going to creep them out because we're Christians. And I think the second piece would just be that I've really looked at, there's a website that you can go to through AmeriCorps where you can find all the different agencies where AmeriCorps members are working, where VISTA members are working. Reach out to the directors and coordinators of those programs. These programs are evaluated based on how they do with retention, and they know that if there's somebody interested in them, taking care of them, that will help. I'm glad to talk about that more at a different point.
Hey, Jack, I know that you've had some experience with working with city directors. Could you share with that?
Yeah, I'd like to. One of the things that I did, as Wayne suggested, is I just got on the web and started looking up AmeriCorps sites and contacting AmeriCorps directors, letting them know about our housing opportunity and what the program was going to consist of. And we managed to get a couple of those AmeriCorps directors who were really excited about offering this opportunity because they know that they have their young adults moving into the community without much support, and they were really thrilled to be able to offer this opportunity to their AmeriCorps participants. So just having 2 or 3 directors who were really excited about that really solved all of our issues as far as trying to get the word out, because then once 2 or 3 AmeriCorps workers heard about it, they told their friends about it, and the word just kind of spread from there.
Jack. So let's shift gears on our questions and ask a couple of nitty-gritty ones. This is a great one that's come in several different times. How are you organized legally, and how do you deal with liability? Are these ministries organized as limited liability corporations, as 501c3s? Are they under the umbrella of a congregation or a presbytery? How do we organize this legally? And I'll put that out to all the panelists.
This is Karen. Bethany House of Hospitality is part of the Urban Mission Cabinet's ministry, but it has been endorsed and fully supported by New Brunswick Presbytery. So legally, it's in the New Brunswick Presbytery at this time. We did because we did so in order to increase our funding potential, in order to write grants and have access to private funders in the future. We did create an Urban Mission Cabinet.Inc., a nonprofit. And so eventually, Bethany House will become a part of that entity.
Do others want to chime in?
I would just say that this is the Common House in Waynesburg. Ours is, I would venture to guess, ours is the least formal out of all the panelists. We are not a 501c3. If we, like when we applied for the Cousins Grant, that went through First Presbyterian Church of Waynesburg. They're sort of involved as the host church and the fiscal fiduciary of all of that. But we are just sort of, I guess technically, a group of young adults living together with a shared purpose, and that's sort of all the more official we really are for right now. I would like to see us pursue 501c3 status, but we're not that state right now.
Great. Thanks, Kyle.
And I'll just say real quickly, this is Jack. Obviously, our program is a program of the seminary, so we didn't have to do anything additionally other than be part of the seminary's offerings.
Great, thank you. Here's a question that came in several different ways, and I think it'll be really interesting for the panel to think about this. Is it possible for us to imagine interfaith versions of this, in which Christians and Presbyterians could maintain their integrity in community membership while living with people of other faiths? A specific version of that is, would Kyle's house be open to people of different faiths? What about people of secular humanists or people that don't claim a faith identity? How would we handle that? Panel?
I'll just chime in.
Well, I think that let's all chime in. Karen, I think you have the one. You live it. So
Right. We opened it up to people of other faiths and people that are, that express the fact that they haven't been connected to a faith community at all or most of their lives. And so right now, among our 5 members, and even last year, we had folks that identify with the Baha'i faith. So we've been open, and it has led to very interesting Vesper conversations. So it is definitely something to be open to. It's been a positive experience for us.
Yeah, again, from the Common House here, we've sort of had this discussion like, does somebody have to be a professing Christian to live here? So rather than putting requirements on the house or requiring a statement of faith or anything like that, from talking to other folks in the area who are doing similar projects, we simply have expectations. So if somebody's considering the house, we say, hey, here's our covenant, here's our order of living. If you can agree to participate in these things, and if you align with these ideas, then great. The other catch there, too, is, again, this is the state of Pennsylvania. I don't know how this works for anyone else. But you cannot say you can't live in a house because you're not of a particular faith persuasion. That's something that we've discussed with our landlord. So there's tricky language there, too. But the way we approach that is not saying you have to be Christian to live here. It's this is what we're about. If you can align yourself to this, then great.
Well said.
Yeah, thanks for raising that. Those are some great issues to consider with this. I'm going to switch also to another nitty-gritty question. Kind of following on those legal questions, do we have any trouble with city zoning permits? The question came in that seems like there's a lot of people living on top of each other. Do you have problems with city zoning? Does anyone face that?
We faced it at Bethany House in that even though there are 8 bedrooms, we can only house 5 residents at one time. So basically my answer is we've obeyed the existing zoning regulations in order not to have problems.
Great, great. Others want to share, or we'll move on to our last question? All right, here's a great question that came in. Is it the reality that young adult hospitality houses only work in an urban or collegiate or large city centers? Or is it just a sense that more rural areas have not yet explored this area of ministry?
This is Wayne, and I would say, well, first of all, if you've been to Waynesburg, it is very rural. And, I think what's fascinating about that story is that I think people assume, oh, I can't wait to get out of Waynesburg, Pennsylvania to go to the big city of Pittsburgh or Charlotte or Atlanta or Philly. But these folks have made commitments as young adults to kind of stay in a particular area. I think it helps that there's a college there. I don't think it has to be, but I will say this, that I would say 90–95% of the intentional community houses that I've worked with through these different faith groups is urban. And so I think if you want to go in a rural setting, I think finding a strong partner like a college or university is a good way to kind of get a good start.
Yeah, and I would only say, again, from Waynesburg, the only real big hassle with being in a rural context is just finding jobs that align with our mission, vision, goals, and objectives, because we're not an urban setting. So opportunities for employment are either too far away or don't offer enough financially to support a member of the house. We have a lot going on here in southwestern PA with the oil and natural gas industry. And that raises questions, if you have some house members who are Vistas doing, stream cleanup and water testing, how do you kind of make that work with somebody who's working security on a rig? So we've had those questions as well. But I'll say, if you can tackle the employment piece, or you can stipend your members to serve in a community and kind of dodge that bullet, we haven't had a problem here.
Okay, anything else on that question from any of our panelists? Okay, I think we'll wrap up our time here. I just want to show the webinar resources again one more time, and just to let you know those will be coming out to you all. I wanted to give a quick plug for the Young Adult Volunteer Program that is accepting applications for international service until January 31st. So if you know any young adults 19 to 30 years old, that want to do that, please let them know. Okay, as we wrap up here, I just really want to thank our panelists, Wayne, Kyle, Jack, and Karen, for participating as panelists today. And thanks to all of you that have joined us online. I want to give a special thanks to our engineer, Andy Rector of Presbyterian World Mission, for helping to ensure this webinar ran smoothly, even though we had some technical difficulties at the beginning, which we apologize for those. And also a big thanks to Lee Stuckey of Faith 3 for all the great behind-the-scenes work she did to make this webinar happen. Again, you'll be receiving a follow-up email, and you're also going to be receiving a follow-up survey. And we'd really appreciate it if you would take that brief survey. It's about 10 questions long, just about your experience at today's webinar. We really would like to hear your feedback and know whether this is helpful, whether we should do future webinars, and what those might look like. Again, thank you all very much, and peace be with you.